Absolutely past my bedtime right now. So normally at 7:25 in the morning when I'm trying to wake my students up, I have to tell them to slap their frontal lobe to wake up because pinching yourself doesn't work, but that actually does. So how about everyone just slap your frontal lobe? Oh, I see my students going like this. We do this too before we take tests or write impromptus, because supposedly, and if it's wrong, blame it on Robin Schley, because she taught this to me. If you cross your hands in front of your eyes and watch them, it activates both sides of your brain. Very exciting stuff. Yes, we do this before every impromptu. It's very, very important, very important. I just want to compliment everyone for coming tonight, because I think that spending a Friday night listening to people share ideas and tell stories is about the coolest thing I've ever heard of. But it's definitely something different. It's not what most people do on a Friday night. And so coming to share in the spreading of ideas and to hear people share wisdom that they have attained throughout the years, it's amazing. It's a wonderful thing. And I thank all of the young people who are incredible world changers for planning an event like this. I think it's incredible. I am going to start with a quotation from Alice in Wonderland, Through Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. You guys are happy about that? I got some fans in the back. Okay, very good. But just briefly before I read the quotation, I want to just say a brief story behind the story, which is one of the things that I love so much about this book, is that Lewis Carroll was actually a mathematics professor. And this gentleman who spent his days working with equations and numbers, at some point woke up in the morning and said, I think I'll write a really crazy, weird children's story. And then he did, and it remains one of the most remarkable children's stories. And I love the counterintuitive, the outside of the expectation nature of the fact that he was a mathematics professor, and yet he wrote this incredible, fantastic story. So here it is. Alice could not help laughing, even in the midst of her tears. Can you keep from crying by considering things? She asked. That's the way it's done, the Queen said with great decision. Nobody can do two things at once, you know. Let's consider your age to begin with. How old are you? I am 7.5 exactly. You needn't say exactly, the Queen remarked. I can believe it without that. Now, I'll give you something to believe. I am 101, 5 months and a day. I can't believe that, said Alice. Can't you? The Queen said in a pitying tone. Try again. Draw in a long breath and shut your eyes. Alice laughed. There is no use in trying, she said. One can't believe impossible things. I dare say you haven't had much practice, said the Queen. When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. That is the title of my speech for this evening, 6 Impossible Things Before Breakfast. Probably, I'm pretty sure, I'm absolutely sure that every single person in this room has had an impossible thought at some point. That there's a tiny glimmer inside of your mind that says that it is both impossible and possible at the exact same time. This is a paradox. And the morning happens to be the most often frequent time when these types of thoughts come to us, because we were just dreaming a minute ago, and then we're awake and we feel refreshed and we're like, oh, maybe I could do that. And so we say to ourselves, yeah, but I would have to do this and this, and the next thing you know, you've talked yourself out of it, or the day begins and you're going on, and it kind of becomes this daunting thing, and you feel thwarted. And then, by noon, it's really feeling impossible, and you probably forgot about it anyways. So I'm going to share with you today a couple of things that many people consider to be impossible. And they are nevertheless things that I have found to be possible more than only in the morning. And they are things that have led me to a great deal of fulfillment in my life. And I'm very carefully choosing the word fulfillment because a lot of people's goal in life is to be happy, but my goal in life is not to be happy, it's to be fulfilled. Hey, if I get to be happy sometimes, I think that's wonderful. But the root word of happiness is happens. And I can't control everything that happens. And there are going to be things that happen that I don't like. And I have to deal with that, and I have to walk through that day anyway, and I have to pull myself up by my bootstraps and be myself, even if what's happening around me is not in line with what I want. And so the word that I choose to use to define what I want in life is fulfillment instead of happiness. Because then no matter what happens around me, I can still feel good about who I am, about what I'm doing, about where I go, and about all the impossible things that I make happen in my life or that I am trying to make happen in my life. And so these are things that have helped me to find fulfillment, and I hope that they might help you as well. So the first one, first of my impossible possible things, is to never ever allow anyone else to have a greater vision for your life or to believe in you more than you do. A long time ago, I was watching a television show and there was a psychiatrist, a child psychologist actually, who was talking, and he said something that struck me very much as an educator, as a teacher, as a person who loves children, as a mother. And he said, if every child had one adult who believed completely in him or completely in her, that would totally transform the life of that child. And I try on a daily basis to communicate to the people that I work with, these young, aspiring writers, thinkers, readers, dancers, musicians, these wonderful people who I get to spend my day with. I try to communicate to them that I believe in them completely. But the revelation that has come to me over time is that it's much more important in terms of the trajectory of their life, that they believe in themselves, than that they have one adult who does. And honestly, there are so many opportunities to build that inside of you when you surround yourself with other people who believe in you, but ultimately it comes down to a belief in yourself. And part of it is having a high standard for your own behavior and your own performance. And I think about what Mr. Svanik was talking about just a minute ago, in that every good idea sort of digresses into hard work. And the reality is that if you go about that work believing that you can get those results, that you can achieve something, and you're doing it not for the A, not for the approval of your parents, not because you're going to potentially have some financial outcome in the future, but just because you can. And just because your potential is there to make it happen. When you believe that, and when you want it more than your teachers do, more than your parents do, more than some extrinsic result, and it becomes about a pride in yourself and a want of something for who you're going to be, it's more fun, and it is rewarding in a way that is totally beyond all of those other extrinsic rewards. And so one of the standards that I have for myself is I like to surround myself with people who believe in me and who are going to champion my vision for my life, but I never let anyone believe in me more than I believe in myself. I'm always, always going to have the highest standard for my own performance coming from myself. The second impossible thing, and I think that there has been a touch of this truth in everything that has been spoken by every speaker tonight, is allow yourself to be known. When you let yourself be vulnerable and real with other people, something amazing happens. And you connect, and it fulfills you. I used to teach this poem, and before we would read the poem, I would foolishly ask my students, how much of the time do you think high school students walk around wearing a mask and pretending to be something that they aren't? And then I'd get really depressed because they would say things like 110% of the time. And I would be like, oh, that's horrible. Really? Well, maybe more like 79.4% of the time. And I'm like, that's not even that much better. Okay, so I don't ask that question anymore because it's way, way too depressing. But the reality is that we do wear masks on a very regular basis in a lot of different settings. Because we're trying to impress people, we're trying to hold up this image of who we are, or protect ourselves from rejection. And the weirdest thing is, this is so ironic, but the only way you're actually going to be accepted and not rejected is if the real you is accepted. And so the time when we feel the most accepted is when we've taken the risk of being authentic and vulnerable and real and not put on the mask and just let other people know us. So the second impossible thing that you might wake up in the morning thinking, I'm just going to be myself today, is to be authentic and to let yourself be known and to take the mask off. Number 3. Mr. Millard mentioned something about this. I'm going to take it a little bit more specific. Number 3 is apologize first. Jason and I argue once in a while. We've been married for 23 years. And sometimes you get into arguments. We don't fight. In fact, I can honestly say we've never had a fight. And my definition of a fight is when you purposefully say things to hurt the other person. And we've never done that. We decided very early in our relationship, we will not fight. But you cannot live with someone without arguing with them. We're both very strong people, so we have arguments. So we have this ethic that we like to employ in our relationships. We're trying to teach it to our kids. It hasn't worked yet, but we're working on it. Okay, and that is that if it is possible for you to get to a place where in the midst of the argument, when you know you're right, and there's absolutely no doubt that the other person is to blame for all of the problems, that you take a moment and you just say, what's more important to me? Winning, being right, or my relationship with this person? And whoever gets to that point first has the courage to say, you know what? I'm sorry. And maybe you don't even have something to really be sorry for. But you say the words, I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. I'm sorry we're having this argument right now because what I care about most is resolving it. I'm sorry that I said it that way because I really think I'm right, but I probably could have said it in a nicer way. There are a million things you can genuinely apologize for and not be lying and not come off as fake that will absolutely deflate the argument and remind you of how much you love each other. And it's like a tiny little hole being poked in the balloon. And all of a sudden, that choice that you made to apologize first is deflating the tension, it's deflating the argument, and it's bringing it back to the core truth, which is that you love each other, you care about each other, and it's more important that you maintain that relationship and find resolve than it is that you are right. Number 4, totally different realm, paradigm shift. Only pay for what you can afford, and overall, spend less money than you make. Oh boy, nobody likes to talk about money. I'm gonna go there. Okay, so another way of saying this is to live below your means. And can I tell you that almost nobody does this? I have 2 statistics to share with you. One is $7,630. I'll tell you what it means in a second. And the other is $15,355. Depending on who you're averaging, these numbers represent the average credit card debt. Not overall debt, just credit card debt. So if you average everybody, including all the people who don't have credit cards, the average debt is $7,630 in an American family. But among people who do carry a balance on their credit card, $15,355. On top of that, studies show that increasingly over time, people are also taking on a greater amount of debt for their cars and their homes and their educations. And so this concept of spending more than you have is something that's very prevalent within our culture. And fighting over money and anxiety over money is one of the leading causes of divorce. And this is an issue. It's a big issue in our culture. And so for all of you wonderful young people, I'm going to give you a really great piece of advice that can set you off on a great track. And it might seem impossible. I'm going to tell you 2 reasons why a lot of people spend way more than they can afford. One is that some people have a poverty mentality. And part of a poverty mentality is that you will never get ahead. You will never be able to have enough money to buy a house. You're never going to get out of debt. You're never going to have those things that you want to have in your life. And so when you've got that money in your pocket, it's burning a hole, you might as well spend it, instant gratification. Long-term vision feels impossible. And therefore, in the short term, people make unwise financial decisions. On the total opposite end of the spectrum, another reason why people spend more money than they have is because they have a sense of entitlement. And they look around them and they see so-and-so has this or so-and-so has that, and totally outside of the realm of realism of what they can afford, they feel like they should too. And so they swipe their way to happiness and swipe it again until all of a sudden they owe $15,000 and they're paying 12% interest, and it's a cycle that is very difficult to get out of. When Jason and I were in college, we lived in a tiny little apartment, which we shared a bathroom with his grandmother. We went out on a date, which we love to go for Thai food particularly. We ordered 1 entree. Jason had to take the bus to school most of the time because we could only afford 1 car. Our car was not very nice. There were many times where instead of going out and doing things that some of our friends could afford to do, we stayed home and rented a movie and had some popcorn and we cuddled on the couch. And there are those times in your life where you just can't do what everybody else is doing. And there are also times in our life when we've been saving for something and where we've made compromises in some areas of our life so that we could attain that long-term vision. And I'm going to tell you how much money I've ever spent on interest on a credit card. $32.47. 2 times in our entire 23 years of marriage have we paid interest on a credit card bill. And the total amount is under $40. I'm going to tell you another secret. I've made way more than that off of credit card companies because I have credit cards and I spend a lot of money on them, but I pay it off every single month. And there's this wonderful invention called credit card points where they pay you to borrow money from them instead of you paying them. And so literally almost $1,000 a year minimum, my credit card company pays me to use their money. So you can turn the system on itself. And the other wonderful thing about living below your means is it allows you to save. More than 50% of American families would have to go into debt if they had an expense of over $4,000. And so if you have an emergency fund, you are able to handle those things that come up. But the only way that's ever going to happen is if you spend less than you earn and you save your money so that you have that emergency fund. Okay, number 5, we're coming in on the end here. I'm going to make this kind of quick. Ask the right question. How many times, see I can ask this question, okay. How many times has someone asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nicole, give me a number. What would you like to be when you grow up, Nicole? 200 times?
Yeah.
Okay, someone else. How many times has someone asked you what you want to be when you grow up?
I got it over
2,000! Wow, my daughter was 3 the first time someone asked her what she wanted to be. We were at a family party and Uncle Bud was sitting across the table and he said, so Bella, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm thinking, what the heck? How does a 3-year-old even know what she doesn't know what she wants to be tomorrow morning. I don't think she knows what she wants to be when she grows up. Okay, I understand that question, and I don't want to minimize the power of getting kids to think about careers and, imagine themselves as firemen and pilots and all those wonderful things that kids say they want to be. Superman! Well, I don't know, whatever they want to be, right? I mean, there's a purpose for that, and I do understand it, and so I'm not trying to minimize that. And then, you get to this age where you guys are about to go off to college, and then everyone's like legitimately curious. Do you have any clue what you're going to major in? Or is there a career path in front of you? And so there's a legitimacy to it. But I'm going to say something to you that I hope will transform the way that you think about the way you talk to young people, if you're someone who is not a young person. And if you are a young person, I hope it will transform the way you think about yourselves in your future. A much better question than what do you want to be when you grow up is who do you want to be when you grow up? And how do you want to be when you grow up? Most adults have about 7 careers where they completely change what they're going to do. Mr. Savanic told you about a major career change that he went through, and one that's been extremely positive for him and that he enjoys. But you're still you. And you were probably still you when you were an engineer, I would gather, because you're the most you person I know. Okay? So, right? Am I talk about not wearing a mask. Mr. Savanic is 100% pure, all true, same in and out, right? So, if the question is, what are you going to be? Then are you going to be 7 different people? Are you going to identify yourself 7 different times? And not everyone has 7 different careers. Some people are weird like me. I want to be an English teacher when I was in 6th grade. That's not normal. But it happens. I don't know. So anyway, if you think about who you want to be and how you want to be, then no matter what you do, you're going to be that way. I love what I do. I get up excited to come to work every single day. It's the greatest thing ever. I'm a teacher to the core. But if you told me tomorrow, you don't get to teach anymore, sorry, you got to go do something else, I would go do something else and I would still be me. And all the things that make me successful and make me enjoy what I do, I would take them with me. Because the question that I ask myself is, who do I want to be and how do I want to be? It's not as much about the what as it is about the who and the how. The final thing I want to say, number 6, is begin tomorrow morning. Everybody says start today, right? It's too late, it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to bed. I don't know about you guys. I'm going to bed. But you know what? Tomorrow morning you're going to wake up. And you're going to feel rejuvenated and refreshed. And you will have been here tonight. And I hope there's one single thing, it doesn't even have to be from my speech, it can be from someone else's. But I hope there's one single idea that maybe today, earlier in the day, you thought was impossible. It was something that you didn't see yourself doing, or something you couldn't envision manifesting in your own life. But you wake up tomorrow morning and it seems possible. You can make it happen. I'm going to tell you a path to how you can make it happen. If you believe that something is possible, it can turn into an actual vision. A vision that you have something you can see. And once it's a vision, you start to speak it. And even better, not even better, and also, you write it down. You write it down and you speak it. And you keep thinking about it, and it's there before you, and you see it, and you're speaking it. And the next thing that happens is those words become actions. And when the actions start happening over and over again, it becomes a habit. And then the habit turns into a lifestyle. And before you know it, you're living in a way you thought was impossible, and you have made it possible. And it's never, ever, ever too late. No matter how in debt you are, no matter how thick that mask is, no matter how unlikely you were to apologize first, any of these things that I've talked about, it's never too late. You can wake up any morning of your life and decide to be something different than you were the day before. And so that's the thought that I leave you with this evening. Thank you all for coming.